Those little wins are just so much stronger than the feelings of failure. I was so obsessed with like crazy outcome. I just started doing like worse and worse.
Billy Mcfarland, founder of Fyre Festival, that ended up scamming $26 million worth of funds off investors and leaving thousands of workers on a remote island when some people nearly, in fact, died. Welcome back, everybody, to Turning Your Adversity into an Asset. Today, I have Billy Mcfarland as a guest on the show, and I thought about how to introduce him. And going by Wikipedia, this is actually my first question for you and how this feels. I don't know if you've looked at this. Your identity is now fraudster. So just this, before we, actually, first of all, welcome, mate. Welcome to the...
Thank you. Yeah, great to be here. And I think like your story is super inspiring and super wild. So excited to be here, excited to chat.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So that was the first thing that hit me. It's like, wow, that's the internet's identity. Is, how did that feel? Have you seen that, by the way, first of all?
So someone brought it up to me like literally for the first time a week ago. Right. And I was kind of scared because like I just didn't care. So it's like, I don't know if I'm just too like jaded from all the like the crap out there, or in the back of my mind, it's like a nice challenge where in reality, nothing is going to matter until I do something positive on a large scale in the future. So yeah, it's wild, but I think it's a good challenge to go after.
And you know what? Like I watched your interview with Diary of a CEO. I met Stephen out in Bali, and really, really nice guy, but he kind of grilled you a little bit. And when was that? When was that actually recorded?
Like around a month ago. So it's fairly recent. Yeah, he's a savage, super smart.
Yeah, I thought, it was a bit of an interrogation, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. It's interesting. So I just want to let you know that there's no judgment for me, bro. As you've seen on my story, I've done far worse. And actually, we're two ex-convicts technically chatting at the moment. So all good on my end. Be grilling you. I think he had some laid out questions and might have missed quite a lot of things you were saying. I mean, something that really struck home for me that he didn't seem to pick up on was he was very confused as to why you were driven in the way that you are, yet you were telling him. Like you was telling him, like my parents and the school, they told me I couldn't do it and shouldn't do it. And, as a result of that, I wanted to kind of prove them wrong. And that's a driver. And I know that one because I've got it as well. It's a kind of mixture of a you and a I'll show you and I want to be somebody and, I want to flip the script. Mm-hmm. So let's start there because I really identify and connect with that entrepreneurial drive. I have it, not quite at the intensity that you had it. I have an unshaken belief of what can be, what's possible. And you obviously have that as well. And I think that's born from that inner desire to prove. And it's that, have you ever heard of Dr. John DeMartini?
No, not familiar. Okay.
He's a behavior expert. And I'll always remember, he says, voids create values. So if you have something that you don't have within, this void, it will create the opposite opposing value to go and seek that thing.
Interesting.
I don't want to make this about me, but just to obviously share a little bit, like, because I didn't really feel loved and accepted as a child, I wanted significance. That was my driving, but that still is my driving force. And although I know it's kind of not really coming from a positive place, it drives me forward regardless. So I run with it. I'm like, well, it's pushing me. It's stretching me. So do you identify with that sort of inner pull to prove it? Well, I know you do. I heard it on the podcast, but I was just curious as to why that wasn't an acceptable answer for Stephen. He kind of still couldn't quite grasp that there should be more to it than that. To me, that's black and white. You want to prove them wrong, and that's why you go over it. Is there any more? I mean,
I think you're spot on, and it's some sort of subconscious desire. And I think it's like that mixed with this feeling of trying to accomplish what you're not supposed to be able to accomplish. And that could be something as simple as like going against your teachers in grade school or grammar school as a young kid, up until like societal and corporate norms as a 30-year-old working in a major city. There's just something intoxicating about those wins, when you actually pull something off that you're not supposed to be able to do, I think it becomes a point where like those little wins are just so much stronger than the feelings of failure that inevitably happen along the way towards those wins. So I think it's like the intoxication effect of pulling things off, plus that desire to fill the inner void, kind of create that storm of just like go, go, go.
That's it, bro. That's 100% it. I couldn't have put it better. And I feel that inside of me. And our brains are very malleable. It doesn't take long to start working in that way before that's a part of our brain chemistry. And you can't turn it off.
Sure.
I try and turn mine off. I can't concentrate on a film. I can't walk down the road without checking my phone. It's inbuilt into my brain and into my DNA. Someone says no, I say yes. Someone says no, I say yes. And it's Well, I very much connect with that part. Of course, there becomes a tipping point though. And with your story, I think at this point most people would have heard of the story. But if you want to give a couple of minutes summary of kind of what went on. I know that's difficult to do, and then we can talk about more so the effects, and we can dive into all sorts.
Happy to tell it all. I think like one interesting thing that I've learned throughout all of this is when it's important to fight back against those no's and when it's not important. So it's like picking your battles that are meaningful to really go and get, and not just fighting every single battle that's presented in front of you. I think that's what led me to a lot of like overall bad decisions, where I could have picked some of the more like interesting or impactful angles and gone full force there, instead of just taking everything as this like internal challenge to go improve myself, which, led to a lot of wrong decisions. But I've been starting like small tech companies since I was literally like 12 or 13 years old. Became one of the youngest people to raise institutional venture capital at 19 during my first year of university. Left university to kind of pursue the tech route. And that led to this 6-year run of building and scaling tech companies up until Fyre and the Fyre Festival. And everything that happened was a culmination of me getting introduced to the entertainment industry through technology, finding this amazing remote island in the Caribbean, hosting entertainers there, thinking it would be fun to launch this like glitzy marketing video of a music festival, waking up having sold $1 million of tickets and having 4 months to try to execute the music festival in the middle of nowhere. And the rest is history.
That's a good place to start. And I love you summarized that perfectly. Let's leave it there. That's perfect. Because do you know what? I want to, and I'm sure you've had this from many people, but maybe you haven't. I don't know. But if you haven't, I want to congratulate the alternate version of yourself in this parallel universe where you pulled that one off and you was a fucking legend. And that was obviously what was driving you to go for it. Now, of course, I'm not condoning the lies and of course the fraud that went on, but there's this tipping point, which I would like to discuss. There must have become a point where it become this mindset to, hey, now I know I'm doing wrong, but I'm too deep. I need to keep on going. I can sort of understand how that's a slippery slope. But I want to congratulate you, mate, because part of me was thinking fair play. And I think a lot of people would think fair play because brilliant marketing, you sold out, like you said, you sold out the tickets, made millions of dollars. You put a very, very ambitious, goal on your plate. And I heard in the Diary of a CEO that you mentioned that you were getting some wins along the way. So you're kind of starting to get fed by, wow, we might pull this off, or not. Wow, we might pull this off. We're gonna pull this off. We have to pull this off.
We have no choice. Life is over if this doesn't happen in 4 months. Let's go and do whatever it takes.
And look, say for example, a couple of those bits went in your favor, and the storm didn't hit, and there was a few. You had 1 extra month or something. You might have gone. You'd have gone down in history for being, one of the most, innovative and ballsy entrepreneurs that's ever existed. So. Look, you did some wrong in there, but you also pushed some boundaries that people wouldn't dare to, but would love to. So I just want to, well done to the good part of you that's in there, mate, because and that's not going anywhere. Like when I watched the when I watched the documentary on Netflix, I was like, that guy is going to go and do something fucking huge in the future because that what drove him then isn't going to fucking go away, right? And even actually is put more fuel on the fire, right?
Sure.
And you're a smart guy. Well, fuel on the fire, that's it. I didn't mean for that.
No,
yeah, but,
not a bad thing. Yep.
Yeah, I think you're going to go off and do something big. But that's my thoughts. I mean, this podcast is called Turning Your University into an Asset. And that's because you really can do that. You know, I'm the other way around. You know, I'm the one that went to prison first, then turned my life around. You've kind of done it back to front. And you're the first guest we've had where you're actually kind of in the thick of your adversity, I guess. You know, you're still in that state. Yes, it's hard to know where to start, really. But let's talk about the tipping point, because there was that moment where you obviously went, the only way out is to lie. I have to commit fraud kind of thing. That was the belief. I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to let people down. I'm going to take one for the team kind of thing and try and pull it off. Where was that point? Was it early on? Was it later on? Did it kind of sort of merge into one and you just didn't realize and you sort of...
I've been asked this like a lot of different ways. I don't think my answer has ever been like great yet. And as I've thought more about it, I think it became this mindset shift where I realized, you know, we're 4 months out and we literally need 1,000 miracles to make this event happen. And we started pulling some, you know, mini miracles off along the way. And I became addicted to that like search of the impossible. And I started taking pride in just making crazy shit happen and just doing whatever it takes to make that happen. And I think like that created this swell of dishonesty. It was more about like, how can we have 2 737 planes arrive in 2 days to, you know, fuel our guests? How can we like, you know, build 800 tents in a week? And like, no matter what it took, I was so obsessed with like crazy outcome. I just started doing like worse and worse shit to create that outcome, and just became like outcome obsessed at any cost. And that just created the swirling like dishonesty to investors and sponsors and whomever else was, you know, involved in the festival.
You use the word obsession there, and it reminds me of sort of my past and addiction. And I've got a very, you know, you could call it addictive personality. You could even call me a you know, addict by nature, or whatever. But I've been addicted to everything going, and now addicted to work. Are you a sort of someone that finds themselves in that world of addiction, obsession in other areas of your life as well, or is it literally mainly just business?
I think just like hobbies, work, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much only work. And I think it was this constant push for more, and I just got bored really fast. Like, okay, here's this crazy challenge that we're not supposed to do. For some weird reason, the right things came together and it happened. Oh, this kind of sucks. Like, how can we go and do more? So it's like never able to be satisfied with that past, you know, step up, and always trying to like, you know, jump another 10 flights of stairs every step of the way.
So it's been a crazy journey for you, because you got a pretty hefty sentence, right? I mean, we're not, for anybody who hasn't watched a documentary, you know, I'll quickly just sort of fill in some of the gaps there. It went pretty terribly wrong. It had to get cancelled. You know, people were almost having their lives put at risk. And obviously a lot of people lost a lot of money. I think it was 27 million roughly, right? And you got 5-6 years in jail. Now that's a long time.
To 6 years, yes.
Having been in prison, I know that's a long time. You know,
it's tough.
It's a whole chunk of your life, and it's enough to completely change somebody, because people change throughout their periods of their life anyway. But being in prison, I mean, you come out an entirely different person. I mean, I only get sentenced of 18 months and things like that. It's the longest I've ever done. And even me, I come out and I'm thinking and even wearing different clothes and shit like that. It's just, it gets in your head. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the jail time, which of course is going to be a topic here. I mean, how bad really was that? I mean, I know you mentioned, the solitary confinement, being away from the friends and family, but I mean, did you have any particularly bad experiences yourself? Did you have any people try and, extort you or rob you?
Wild. And I think like there's like a weird thing with time. Like I was 24 and then just turned 25 when the Fyre Festival game happened, got arrested. And I was just moving faster than all of my peers that I grew up with, right? Like they were in their second year or third year of work after like university. And I was trying to run this like massive media company. Yeah. And then I go to jail. And then the rest of my 20s, I'm in jail and they're kind of progressing with their careers. And I get out and like they've taken 10 steps up and I've been like, knocked down 10 pegs. So it's like interesting how everything kind of like evens out and balances out at the end of time. But yeah, time is just like the most brutal thing. We just can't fight against it.
you say to knock down 10 pegs, and of course it's going to feel that way, but you're probably one of the most famous fraudsters in modern day time at the moment, right? I mean, it's not the best thing to be known for, but as controversy sells, there's opportunities coming your way. You've just been on UK's number one, podcast, and I'm sure there's going to be so many opportunities coming your way because you're on everyone's radar now. They know you, and with time, they will start to trust you again, and they'll know that you're a silly little kid that fucked up, that was just fucking at balls.
The one really good thing is that no one can hide their feelings, right? It's like very visceral. They're either like, okay, I'd love to work with you, or like get together with you, or it's like, fuck off, I never want to see you again. So like there's no middle ground anymore, which is kind of like, it's kind of soothing in a certain sense. There's no hidden agendas as much.
True, yeah. I know that you'd seen other people experience any bad things, but did you have anything, did you get beaten up? Did you get extorted, pinned up, asking people, wire money? Because I know that stuff happens,
For sure.
If they know you've got a couple of quid, we call it, but dollars in your back pocket, regardless of, because I'm not stupid. I should imagine there's, actually, we won't go into that just in case that relates you in some way, but I should imagine there's some money somewhere. And probably these guys don't understand, probably don't have a brain cell between their heads and just see you and see the millions and think, we need to get something from this guy. Did that happen? Any extortion, any attacks?
So I think like one funny just like way to kind of balance the world is, of course, everybody always asks like, what did you do? As like the first question when you're there. And initially I would say wire fraud because like that was technical charges. And then it's like the first time I said it, the guy's like, oh, what kind of wires were you stealing? Copper wires? I'm okay, maybe I'll just stick to saying fraud from now on. So just like a funny like merging of two worlds there. But I think
quickly interesting you say that though, because I know that identity is very important in prison, what your sentence is in for. If you're in there for paedophilia, you're going to get killed. You're in there for murder, you're going to be top of the ranks, and it's sort of everything's in between. So I guess there became a point where you started calling that something else, something a little bit more favorable that kind of give you a bit of a better reputation, right? Did you?
Yeah, I would just say fraud. And then like people would think that's like stealing credit cards or like gift card fraud. And it's like couldn't comprehend when I didn't know how to do that. They just didn't believe me.
Did you not think of, making it sound a bit more sexy, something like I was, the leader of, what could you call it? In a prison world, you could call it a professional crime gang that extorted multi-millions, in Pablo Escobar's island. You had a good angle there that would have probably put you up in the ranks a little bit. You didn't bother leveraging it in any way.
The problem is the inmates watch like so much of the trashy daytime TV and like all the talk shows and stuff like that, and like there's a lot of like infamous pictures of like me being super fat, like passed out on the beach with like a beer in my hand, just like looking like a total idiot. So it's like I had no legs to stand on.
Right, fair enough.
The mastermind was not going to fit. Yeah,
fair enough. So okay, so prison, obviously, other than solitary confinement, you didn't have any particular bad experiences. Then you sort of kept yourself to yourself, and they kind of respected you, I guess, in a certain respect, and you got through it. Because I know sometimes it's tough. I mean, I've been to a young offenders institution, and you got to fight pretty much almost most days, just not look too vulnerable to the point where you're going to be robbed or I
guess the race aspect was difficult to acclimate to in the beginning, and I think that led to my early problems. I spent my entire like adult life in Manhattan in New York. And I think I'm like very shaded and shielded from the realities of like a lot of the world. And I think jail is just 5 decades behind socially. So there was just this like racial barrier and system that I was, I guess, like privileged enough to have never experienced in my life. And it's like not understanding how to fall in line when I initially got there. So I guess like ran into initial problems by not like respecting the societal norms of like how a prison should be run.
So you mean not mixing with sort of black people, or was that?
Yeah, it's just like, I walk in day one into a Brooklyn detention center where there's all kinds of, federal inmates in there. And I'm 25 years old, and I got along better with like the 25-year-old black Brooklyn kid than with like, some like white pride guy from like wherever who's like 60 years old. So it's like, it didn't really mesh. And like, they were trying to like lecture me on, you can't do that. You can't hang out with him. And like, I just like didn't like, I kind of blew them off, and that like led to, I think, my first and only like physical altercation there. But yeah, it was just a tough period, just realizing that like the rest of the world isn't like, you know, a big urban city, and like shit happens out there. And like, so it was just a crazy mind like experience. I can
imagine, because I was like into criminality. So I was kind of talk their talk and walk their walk at the time. It's a whole different thing to America anyway. I mean, English prisons are actually fucking pretty nice comparison to some of the TV shows that I've seen in the States. So it looks like you had like, of course, I mean, no one wants to be away from their friends and family for 5 years, and that was tough. But it looks like, you know, from my perspective, you had a pretty okay ride through that. I mean, is that right, or would you disagree?
Yeah, it could have been way worse. I think like there certainly are people who deserve to be there for a long period of time, but be there forever.
How do you think prison changed you?
Mm-hmm. It became all, I know it's like cliche, but it became all about the process for me. And like, obviously, as you know, when you have that much time to reflect, like you start to form these stories in your head about like why you did certain things or why certain things didn't work. I think for me, especially being in jail where other people were glorifying their crimes, I realized that I shared that mentality where I would just like brag about how I got something done, even if it was like a terrible, like shady, manipulative, like way to get it done. And so I think jail helped me reset that. And it's like the outcome, like let's take pride in how we're doing things. And I knew I can pull things off. Like I've always been able to go against the grain and like make the impossible a reality. But what if I start doing it like the right way and doing it consistently? Then when things happen, like the magnitude of that will be so much bigger. So both for like a business success standpoint and like a human moral standpoint, just taking it really about the process and like doing right by everybody and building those relationships as in building and trying to create some sort of business success.
It's almost like sometimes we talk about like universe moment, we call them. It's like sometimes, you know, the universe gets involved and it gives you a little bit of a knock on the head or whatever. And it's for a reason, you know, it's like, it's to teach you something, you know, that's the whole turning your adversity into an asset thing. You know, you could see this as, again, I heard something about people said they wanted you to go and get a job. And I mean, that's not turning an adversity into an asset. That's turning an adversity into a adversity, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got to do something with this. And the path that you were on could have led to even more severe consequences. Like you said, you know, when you actually cancelled the Fyre festival, it was due to thinking a couple of people had died, you know. If you'd have got away with that, you know, there's who knows what the next crazy stunt would have been. So I like the fact that you took that reflective time to, I don't just want to get the outcome, I want to get the process right as well. And it may take a little bit longer, but it'll be more sustainable. And okay, I've taken that hit, I've been knocked down a few pegs, got the message, but I'm still going to carry on, you know? Was there a time where you considered not carrying on? Or was it just like, right, I got to just ride this out and then I'll be back on my feet? Or did you actually think, I don't think I can recover from this? Was there any moments?
I think the worse it got, the more like determined I was. Like, I'm just like, I kept saying to myself, like, I am just not as pathetic as like everybody's trying to like make me out to be at this point. And I think like right in the mix of it, like, you know, midway through my sentence, when the documentaries came out and there was a lot of media, I had people who had known me for years, whether they were writing letters or visiting me or like having phone calls on me basically saying like patting me in the head, like, it's okay, Billy, like you can't do that, but like, maybe you can go drive an Uber or work in a bartender job and we'll help you get there. Like, just like follow our lead. And like, as I had time to think about it, like so many people who I guess were a little confused about like the lead up that I had before, because in their minds, like they were smarter, just as smart. They didn't leave school. They worked at great jobs, but they weren't getting the like entertainment and lifestyle access or benefits or perks that I was living. And they were like, secretly, I think a little like jealous of that. And then when I got like knocked all the way down, they're like, yeah, I did do the right thing. Like my path was the best. Like, and no, since my path is so great, like you can follow me now and we'll help you like, you know, get back on our path, but not be as good as us. So it's like, that really pissed me off. It's like people who truly knew me for so long now thinking like, you know, trying to justify their existence or choices because they didn't go to jail basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm testament that it doesn't have to hold you back. I can actually tell you that, strangely, going to jail and being so honest about everything that I've done in my past has been the biggest trust factor I've ever had. People would say that because you're so open and so transparent and so honest with everything that you did, I trust you more than the people that, smile to the camera and say all the perfect things, pretend they're don't stink kind of thing. No humans are perfect. We all make mistakes. I mean, your one was pretty big.
Yeah.
But we've all got our sins, right? And if you pretend you don't have them, that's when you're inauthentic and untrustworthy. If you can hold your hands up and say, I f***ed up and I'm going to recover from this, it's going to take a while, but you know that you're going to be able to. I mean, my opinion of it is you're going to build another business. It's already happening, and I've seen. It's going to do well because you're a smart bloke and you've had a lot of time to think. A bloke, that means a man, by the way.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And you've had a lot of time to think about what your next step is, right? This isn't just something that you've had a lot of thinking time in.
Sure.
As a CEO, strategic thinking time is the number one, thinking about map and not having those distractions. And you've had 5-6 years of it. So whatever's going to come next is going to be good. In my opinion, if you get those people paid off that you owe that money to and continue to do the right thing and obviously don't commit any more fraud, there'll be another documentary about you and it will be a whole journey with this being one piece of the puzzle, and know that. And this very much could have been the catalyst that actually sends you to the fucking moon eventually, maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now. But you're now famous, right? Not for the right reasons, but as they say, there's no such thing as bad press. And you're obviously a very shrewd marketer. You know that. So I'm telling you things that you already know anyway. But I just want to give you I just wanted to, because I felt like you had a bit of a hard time in the Diary of a CEO podcast. So I want to lift you up a little bit. I feel a bit bad because you like, no offense, but at the time, because he obviously maybe was a bit intimidating, you looked a bit broken. And I thought, hang on, is this guy, broken? But you're not broken, are you? I get the sense you're not.
I just didn't do any research before Diary of a CEO. I think it was booked 36 hours before the podcast date.
Right. Did they fly you out? Or was it well, look, we're going to fly you out, pay you this?
It's one of those. It's hey, reached out and we had mutual friends and they're like, hey, we have these guests coming on this day. Would love to have you on too. And I heard from a bunch of friends in London, Steven's a man, he's super smart. It's hell yeah, let's go and do it. And a great platform to break into London. And I sit down and he's like, so why'd you do all this? I'm like, oh gosh, what did I sign up for? But he's a genius, wildly smart and it's super dialed in, but it was a good experience. And I think definitely learned from it.
Yeah, because I can see you up on the back foot,
what does that? I'm looking at my guys who are on the side. I'm do we know what it's going to be
And it's going to be the complete opposite. We're already sort of smashing into this. So, what's one question that you haven't been asked that you thought you might have been asked up until this point?
Oh, interesting. Oof. That's actually a good question. And it's I've been underwhelmed by a lot of the mainstream media and journalists so far. And I think even the ones who are working at these acclaimed publications pretty much copy and paste 90% of the story and just get a quote from you and call it a day. And it's been very bad and little deep diving questions. I think a lot of the podcast hosts have gone on such as Steven and such as you have done a better job getting to the meat of the substance. It's been a learning experience to me. So I think we will just see crazy disruption in this incumbent space with all these media giants. But the question I haven't been asked.
And feel free to have a think.
I think people just smart people on the podcast side have done a good job of diving into the hard intrinsic motivation. But I think people just haven't asked a lot about the human side. Hey, what did you miss most? And stuff like that. And, I'm not sure if the audience cares about it, but I feel that's a stone that's got uncovered because there's so much deep that I did that people have kind of forgotten about the little things that makes life. So
okay. And what's one question that you don't want to be asked?
I think I'm a little jaded to the point now where it's like, I think I've been asked all of the bad stuff like so many times. And I think the hardest thing for me is like, you know, if you're told like some bad news the first time, like you get really sad, you might cry. The second time you're still really sad. But like when you're told 1,000th time that something bad happened, like you kind of like brush it off. So I think the hardest thing for me is to not brush off the hard questions that need like emotional answers. One, it's hard to be emotional after like being asked the same thing for 5 years. So I think that's something like I'm struggling with. Yeah.
I know how you feel about that as well. Cause obviously I've told my story a lot of times. If you do truly feel jaded though, I could throw you a couple of questions and see
let's go.
You have friends? Okay. Well, and you got to be honest as well.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't count.
No, I'm good.
Are you proud of what you did?
I'm proud that I had the balls to take the chance. I'm disgusted by like the period of X amount of time where I like totally lied and went wrong. And I'm going through this like weird phenomenon now where these seemingly successful entrepreneurs who, you know, are on the cover of magazines, in the news for running these massive like venture funded businesses, meeting with a handful of them over the past couple of months. And they all try to connect with me by bragging about like the worst thing they've done in their life. So they come to me and say, hey, you know, X years ago, or I did this shady thing and got away with it. And like, they expect me to like, you know, dap them up and be like, oh, you're the man, like, hell yeah. And then when I don't react that way, they're so confused. But what it makes me think is that I truly was acting in a way where these people feel the need now to connect with me on like a path of life that I want nothing to do with. I think I was just truly operating in a way that like makes me disgusted now. When I hear them say it, I'm like, wow, this guy, like, that sucks. Like, I don't want to be around this person, but I was that person for a period of time. So overall disgusted, but pride that I had the balls to try to do something like different and unique. But good question.
That was a good answer as well, and that's fair. Something that I've noticed through some of the interviews that I've watched is there's very little mention on your part of the victims of this. How much do you care about those people?
I think for me, it's like half respect and half fear. And once again, great question.
There's a spectrum. There's a spectrum as well, isn't it? We're obviously talking about everyone from like probably someone that threw in a couple of mil in investment all the way down to like, you know, the workers on the ground on the island who obviously lost their life savings kind of thing. That doesn't come up so much on your end. Is that prevalent for you?
I think it's like the biggest driver to me is to make everybody whole. And I realize like that's financially, that's emotionally, there's a lot of aspects to it. But I think like my fear to talk about it is just like, it's out of fear, out of respect, and just like knowing I did wrong by a lot of people of all walks of life. And I need to walk a very fine line and kind of respect the privacy and respect just the nature of my crimes. And it's not right to shine a light on people who were hurt by the situation. It's like, I fucked up. And so like, and they took heat from it, whether there was a contractor, a boat driver, an investor, an attendee, they all kind of had their own issues in life because of trusting me. And I need to like rebuild that trust and not like shine a spotlight on it. So I think it's like, until people, it's also probably like a shame thing, right? Like until I feel people are paid back, it's hard to look them in the eye and be like, hey, I did right by you. So
I get that. Because the absence of it, I get what you're saying to not shine a spotlight on it, but it's already been shined on.
Yeah.
So the absence of it being mentioned does sometimes feel like it could be, still, all about you and what you can gain. And is there really been that realization that what you've done is bad, not because you got jail time, but because it was ethically and immorally bad, right?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it is the biggest driver for me. And it's like, I'm also scared, and I don't want to say the wrong thing and piss off somebody who has the power to, lock me away and throw away the keys for the rest of my life. So it's like, how do I walk that fine line of doing more than anybody else in my shoes would to make things right, but respecting the system and the process and everybody who's involved along the way.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your emotional intelligence like in terms of how you can connect with other people and how you can feel and empathize and sympathize?
I don't know. It's so hard to judge yourself, right? I would say I don't know, 7.5.
Really?
Yeah. I think it's hard to judge myself, and I have no comparison, right? So
Sure.
I'm the only reference point, so I guess it's hard to.
But you can compare yourself to other people, and I'm sure there's times where you can quite obviously see that you're entirely different to everybody else that's in your company that's telling you not to do things, and you've got there's logic and emotions. Sometimes they can contradict each other, and the emotions pull people back, right? The fear, doubt, the skepticism, the lack of self-worth, the lack of confidence, all those things pull them back from making those logical decisions that, of course, they want to do. Yeah. Whereas you was able to literally, as a matter of fact, just say, do this, do that, do that, do that. And that takes either a lot of emotional turmoil to somebody who feels emotions, or is very easy to do for someone who has low emotional intelligence. Or that's not the right way of saying it, because I'm not referring to you as being, or anybody is not intelligent, but low on the emotional spectrum. I identify as being low on the emotional spectrum. And you mentioned fear there. And that was interesting to me. Like, you're scared. You see, you're scared. Yeah. And of course, a prison time would have done that. But was there not fear before? Or during the actual, process, was that not scary then?
Okay. I have 3 points to make off your question here, which I think was great. One, I wasn't scared when I was 24. Okay. And that was one of the biggest problems. I was pushing life in every sense of the way, whether it was hey, let's take a boat off the festival site, drop a ton of bait in the water and let me see what crazy sharks I can try to jump on top of, and just having no respect for nature and life. Or investors or ticket holders, no, I didn't know failure at that certain level. And I'd become immune to, I guess, the emotional pitfalls of small failure. I kept thinking small failure is nothing but a step in the road, and let's keep pushing through. So I didn't know failure until I really fell on the highest level. One thing about emotional intelligence is I had a good friend who is probably the smartest IQ person I've ever known. And he'd always done well, but had never really taken that step to be exceptional in his career. I talked to him a little bit in jail, but nothing too deep and emotionally. When I got out, saw obviously in the news, he's now on top of the world and doing so well. But the first time I sat down with him, I'm this guy over the past 5 years has learned emotional intelligence, where I think he was a 1 on the EQ scale before jail. He's now probably an 8. And his IQ stayed the same. His drive has stayed the same, but his business success went from this to this, purely just based on him figuring out the EQ. So I do think that to find sustainable success, you need to have that balance between IQ and EQ. And he had all the IQ in the world before, but he could never break through. And when he finally started empathizing, he was able to build a massive business and have hundreds of employees and really understand them and motivate them. So I do think there is a balance that you need to find sustainable, long-term success.
And do you think that's something that's happened for you during the prison time as well? Because before you said you wasn't scared and, you was very logical. And now you mentioned fear, you mentioned all these things. Is that another change that's had? I
think I probably snapped back too far in the other way, where I'm probably a little too gun shy right now in certain aspects of life, and the middle ground is probably where I need to be. And I hope I'll get there. But yeah, I think a lot of the emotional stuff just went through in different ways in jail, where it's seeing someone who is going to be there for 30 years, who in my mind doesn't deserve to be there. And hearing him on the phone talk to his family, those moments make you cry. But then the next day, getting a newspaper in the Wall Street Journal and there being a 3/4 page spread about the anxiety of going to a wine store because there are too many options. And it's fuck those people. There's 1,000 guys in this room that would chop their leg off to go to a wine store right now. And it's I can't empathize with that. With this guy who's losing his life and he's talking to his daughter or son on the phone, and that makes you cry. So it's it kind of, I think, expanded the horizons a little bit, but also maybe
wow. So what I'm getting from that is there's emotional intelligence and there's an emotional resilience, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes seem as though somebody has low emotional intelligence and they're not feeling and they're just very matter of fact, very logical and very ruthless, right? When actually they just have a very high perspective over, fear, and have a very, high perspective or low tolerance or whatever you would say. But yeah, it takes certain actions and certain results that will feed that part of you and allow you to realize that things aren't as scary as they're made out. And obviously, like you said, those micro wins would have allowed you to push through the fear more and more and more, and go into prison and really hitting home what fear is and things like that. Again, it can only serve you. And that doesn't necessarily mean you don't feel emotions and can cry for somebody, but it means, I guess, that you just don't get affected by the small shit, and you just have a deeper perspective over what's fear and, what's bad and what really matters, I guess. Am I putting words into your mouth, or does that sort of kind of make sense?
It's good. There's also, I think there's negatives to it too, right? When you stop caring as much about the little things, it carries over to life outside work. And you don't want to not care about the little things when it comes to your partner, your kids, your parents, your cousins, your siblings, whatever it is. So it's like, I think there is like a balance there that needs to be learned, but that's like kind of like what this journey is about, right? Like we shouldn't have it all figured out emotionally at 30, 40, 50. It's why we're here for how long we're here.
I don't think we ever get it figured out. It's always about balancing and juggling and just finding that, ideally at some stage, sort of a balance of all of those things, like you said, so that you can, be logical and make amazing decisions via genius, as well as being able to fully express and feel your emotions, as well as being able to dismiss the little things in business and get ahead, but be present. And I'm just reiterating what you've said. I couldn't have said it any better. But it's difficult, isn't it? And sometimes I know what it feels like to be blinded into one particular track and have that compelling drive that's so deep within that it's almost like nothing can stop it. Do you still have that feeling now? Because you mentioned the little things, right? So are you consciously trying to experience the little things whilst still having that inner drive? Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah, I think one thing I think I probably snapped back too far. I was probably paying too much attention to some of the little things, maybe in the work aspect. And still learning and trying to find that balance. And it's how on the personal side to friends can you be the one who's always there for the little stuff, but in the work life, how can you kind of keep pushing for the big thing and getting help to manage the little things? So a life balance. And unfortunately, I think some of the stuff what makes you great in business doesn't always make you, a great person in the personal side. So it's, how can we become more complete humans and balance both sides?
I'll tell you what advice. I lived 3 years in Bali. That can help.
Super jealous. Yeah.
Literally, I was there over lockdown and while she was in jail, I guess, sort of rub it. But it was just personal development galore there. We even opened up a cafe called Cafe Coach, because it's just full of coaches just in this one part of Bali. And it's just you can go into the jungle and do mushroom ceremonies, and you can do it's unbelievable. But even with that stuff, I still find it difficult because the logic and the drive is still so compelling. But I do find it difficult to concentrate outside of work and find that balance. And we're very similar, really. We've done things a little bit back to front, but we're the same age. We're still figuring shit out. We've made some mistakes. We've had some success. So I guess let's talk a little bit about what's next, right? Because you've already got another business on the boil, and you said, you're already talking to shareholders, investors and things like that. So what's next for you? And also, actually, I'll leave the question until after. So what's next for you, Billy?
I think the one thing that you mentioned that really resonated with me is that having the 5 years or whatever it was to think ahead. And I just never had that before jail. Literally, no matter what the scale was, whether it was $1,000 or $10 million, I was always worried about meeting that payroll every 2 weeks and making sure the bills are paid. And it was always a fight and always a struggle. And just didn't have the ability to get things stabilized and think, more than a couple of weeks ahead. And jail was so amazing because it's all right, I don't need to worry about monetary survival for 4 years or 5 years. How can I think 10 years ahead for the first time in my life? So for me, I kind of got back to technology, which is really what took me to Fyre and everything that happened in the first place, and thinking about where tech will go in the next decade of my life. So working on a brand now called Pirate, spelled Pyrt, and it takes all the facets. Yeah, it takes all the facets of the things that I think I did well, which is taking these interesting people from crazy diverse backgrounds, bringing them together through almost like life-defying adventures and experiences, and then now hopefully building some technology that can amplify this and share it with the rest of the world.
And you're talking VR, right?
Yeah, VR. And it's like, how can a small number of people go and explore the craziest aspects of the world, but then open these experiences to everybody else through VR to get involved, affect, and even own what's happening?
How did you keep a finger on the pulse in terms of the technology while she was inside? Was it reading papers and things like that? Or did you have access to something else?
Just read a lot of books, and I've always hated sci-fi, but like read a couple of sci-fi books for the first time just to like try to spark some creativity, and did a lot of like writing and journaling. I never hand wrote anything, I guess, since like grade school, right? So it was like 10 or 15 years still, I'm not handwriting anything. I think the act of like physically slowing down, like I suck at writing things. So it's like physically slowing down, like almost sparked this creative juice that I otherwise like didn't know how to tap into, that kind of helped me think ahead. And yeah, so now we're here trying to build Pirate and hopefully going bigger, but making a positive impact.
Nice. Yeah, they say going back to basics is sometimes really powerful. And, you know, I did rehab, and one of the things they recommended, kind of forced me to do, was journaling and reflecting and writing and things like that. And prison, you know, I can say was at times some of the most peaceful moments of my life. And I know that sounds crazy to everybody listening, but maybe you can resonate. You know, when they lock those doors and you are safe, you know, there's no one to be, there's nothing to do, and there's nothing to, no responsibilities. You're told what to do, where to go, what time to do it.
Yeah.
And you just have that. It's probably one of the most present moments in myself I think I've ever had. Yeah. And by the sounds of it, you've had some of that stillness as well.
For sure.
Of course, there's obviously been other spectrums to that, of course, along the journey. So my next question, but you kind of answered, you alluded to it when you said, I got the chance to think about what I want to be doing in 10 years time, because of course, you know, working backwards, you know, from what's going to be happening in the future makes sense. So who will Billy Mcfarland be in 10 years? Tell me about the kind of money you'll be making, the impact you'll be making, and the kind of person you will be.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're on a pirate island, wherever it is, with every single person that was affected by my terrible decisions in the past. And I can shake all of their hands, and we both know in our hearts that they got back everything they lost and so much more. And a lot of that is just like emotional and trust, but they know that trust is rebuilt and they can rely on me moving forward. And like, that's when I'll sleep easy at night.
That's good. What about the money? What sort of money? What are you aiming for? You got digits, numbers that you're working on?
So I've been asked this, not on podcasts, but like in life in so many different ways. And I just like never really had money goals, and no one believes me. It's never about
I believe you, because I know the drive that you've got.
Yeah, it's like
where it comes from. And
it's truly not about like some end goal of money. And I've always been terrible at like saving and financial management. Like I'm never the kind of guy where like, hey, if I make X millions of dollars, like I'm going to retire. It's more about like, I want to do something super impactful, and I want to build something that just touches a lot of people. But along the way, like I need to fix and rebuild that trust. And sure, the money is amazing. Like it's a driver, but there's no like end goal in sight.
I've always said that if I made $500 million on Bitcoin or, you know, whatever it might be, it wouldn't mean anything to me whatsoever. It's like I want to make impact and I want to feel significant. And I know that it taps into old traumas, like I was mentioning, and I just want to feel loved by daddy, basically. But you can't turn those things off. You know, they're there, and it's difficult. And especially when they're serving you, you know, in some capacity. And you know, luckily, I haven't made some of the decisions you have, and it's obviously paid well to have that drive. Although be it kind of not the most positive of drivers. Same with yourself. I mean, you know, the driver is now to to help repay these people. And that's probably not the best driver you could have in the world, but it will get you off your ass and get you working,
Yes.
All right. Well, I'd just like to see the scale of where your brain is then. How could you quantify where you'll be in 10 years? I really want to understand how big you want to go. Like who you compare yourself to, or how many people you're going to impact, or if it's not money, what is it?
I think it's just like the coolest thing to me is building something that everybody's using, right? And like the easiest way to do that is technology. If I can like wake up and have 50 million people using a product that I built, like, that's super cool to me. So do I quantify that in users, or is it like, hey, I want Pirate to have 5,000 employees in 10 years and be a massive business that spans across a dozen locations in, a dozen countries? Like that would be amazing. But it's all about like impacting and working with a lot of people to build something that like affects your average person on a daily basis. Like, and that is super cool.
I resonate with you in a lot of ways. This is why I wanted to get you on the podcast.
Nice.
Very, very similar, just back to front. So have faith that, and you know it, that you're going to turn, this wrong right. And, we'll have you back on the podcast if it's still going in like 5 years from now. And you're on the other end. How you turn adversity into an asset. At the moment, you're still kind of in the adversity stage. But
we'll do it from Pirate Folly back to your cafe.
Yes, let's do it. Well, it's been a pleasure having you. I really, really appreciate
Thank you so much.
Time. And stay out of trouble. Go and make them billions. Go and change the world. And I'll be watching from a distance.
Thank you for having me on. It's a blast. Looking forward to the fan reaction to this.
Awesome. Take care, man.
Yeah, later. Talk to you soon.